Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap, powered by Business Freedom Advisors, the podcast for business owners who want to grow their business and enjoy their life. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Landis, creator of the TriMetric tracking system and author of Balancing Act. If you're tired of chasing success at the expense of your health, your marriage, or your peace of mind, you're in the right place. On this show, we help you track what really matters: business health, life quality, and leadership performance, all in one simple, powerful system. Because when those get out of sync, everything else starts to break down. Our goal here is to help you align it all so you can lead with clarity, scale with purpose, and finally enjoy the freedom you've been working so hard to create. And if it feels like no one's ever shown you how to pull that off, this podcast might just be the missing link you've been quietly searching for. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap Podcast, brought to you by Business Freedom Advisors. It's Scott and Jeff here, and we're continuing the series that we've been unpacking about executive performance and what all that means: installing an executive performance system into your business using an executive performance process. And today we're going to, I guess we've been kind of in the weeds about all the pieces of executive performance. Today we're going to kind of take a higher level view and just show that executive performance does not just exist by itself. And we allude to that, but there's a construct around that we'll unpack today. So it sits inside of a bigger picture, because founder freedom isn't created just by fixing an isolated part of the business. That's why we've been talking about executive performance. We were talking about business health. So you can improve meetings, you can clean up roles, you can build the dashboards, you can document all the processes, and it still can miss the full picture. And that's why, Jeff, that's why we have the TriMetric Flywheel, and it helps us look at the founder-led company through three lenses: business health, executive performance, and life quality, all in one thing. That's the TriMetric. So in this episode, we're just going to unpack where executive performance systems fits inside the TriMetric, why it matters, and how it helps turn business growth into founder freedom, particularly for those kind of founders that we like to talk to, who are a lot of times in the middle of raising families, or family oriented or purpose oriented, typically married, trying to keep a happy spouse along the way and grow the business to create more freedom. So Jeff, question I'll throw over to you to get us started is just, why do we have the TriMetric Flywheel? I mean, what's the point?
So the flywheel really is about being able to see the forest through the trees, kind of thing. It's really taking a step back, being able to view life not in a vacuum, because we can look at the executive performance, the business health, the life quality, all in vacuums individually, but we're missing out on a lot of aspects of life if we are not looking at them as a whole. And to me, the foundation of it is about creating the life you want rather than just reacting to your schedule and letting your schedule dominate who you are. And so to be able to do that, really looking at each individual process, because there's different elements to life quality or executive performance, that different processes to really maximize those areas, but they have to work together. And I think we've all been in stages of life where we have focused on one thing, one element too much, and the other elements of life have really been hurt because of that. And so if, for instance, if we could focus a lot of time on executive performance, but if we're not looking at the business health along with the executive performance, then we can get too far into really maximizing our executive performance while having the business actually be hurt because of it. Because we need to be looking at what our necessary contribution is to the business as well, and making sure that just in a vacuum, our executive performance isn't taking away from what the business needs from me. But then also, if we're focusing on executive performance, we can have that be just a life drain for us and end up taking away from family life, or whatever other elements that is for people. It's different for everyone. And vice versa. There's downsides to all of them if we aren't looking at it as a whole.
Yeah, it makes me think of a couple of things. One is I'm reminded that I learned really, really well what you're talking about from a mentor of mine, um, Patrice, from years ago. And he was running a conference and he made this illustration in front of the group. Um, and he brought people up. It's an entrepreneur training. He'd bring up the entrepreneur, and then he would say, "Okay, you're in the hot seat. We're going to ask you some questions. Pick somebody from the audience to represent your family." And so he put the family on the person's right side. And now pick somebody in the audience to represent your customers. Pick somebody in the audience to represent your vendors. Um, Pick somebody in the audience to represent your business partner, whatever those relationships are. He would illustrate this scenario and say, okay, what does your family want from you? And the entrepreneur says, oh, they want my time. They want me to be present. And he's like, okay, well, over there, what's your customer want from you? Oh yeah, they also want my time. And so okay, you have, what happens if you spend all this time with your customer? What happens to you financially? You have stability, you make more money, and it's like, okay, good. Your family likes that, right? You bring home the bacon, and then so if you bring over to your family some business growth and financial growth, financial independence, cash flow, better things, better vacation, your family's going to like that, right? And you're spending more time with them. And now you're over there looking at your customer, and your customer is asking you where you are. And he just builds up this tension, and it's, relational focus. But there's this tension between what all these, as you're a business owner, as you're a founder, as you're an entrepreneur, you have all these relationships that it's impossible to manage all of it. And then take the relationship of your own self, your physical health, your spiritual health, maybe your marriage, your own fun and recreation. All of these tensions exist, and that was that was illustrated to me so well years ago. Oh, close to 20 years ago. And it was so impactful to me. The TriMetric kind of was seated in that illustration. Like, how do you do all this? Like, the tension is the question, right? Like, how are you supposed to manage all this? It's not even possible. But I realized along the way, it really helps to measure things. It really helps to have something that quantifies where am I at today. Even if you just
Mhm.
take the life quality and you look at, okay, um, how's my home and family situation? How's my love and my intimacy? How's my fun and recreation? How's my health and energy? You just measure those 7 things that we unpack out of the life quality. Just looking at that, trying to balance that in the life quality, and then you look over at your business health, and that has an entirely another and several other things that we're unpacking. And just trying to balance it all. I mean, that's why we wrote the book Balancing Act, because it's like, how do you do all this? And at least the TriMetric gives you a metric to measure where you're at. We're always diagnostic forward. The TriMetric Flywheel is about the truth. Let's get real. What's true, and then you can actually do something about it. Instead of saying I wish it were this, or I can't wait until it's this. Let's find out, what is it right now in your current reality, and that's what the
Mhm.
TriMetric is all about. At least get the truth.
Right. And it's all that's good. The Balancing Act really is a great book for explaining all of that. I was going to bring that up as well. And nobody does it perfectly that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But and
Good,
it's
good
a
point.
there's a dance. I love that it looks like on the cover you guys are dancing in there because it really is a dance that you
Mm,
have to go through life with and do it together. I think one of the keys in that, if you are married, is the oneness together.
mm,
There was a time in a long time ago in a previous season of life, my wife and I were planting a church. And we had, I don't remember how many kids we had at the time, two or four, but we had a bunch of kids and we were trying to figure out life together. And we came, and our priorities are God, spouse, kids, and then it varies for the rest. But for all of us, those are the top three in our family. Those are the top three: God, spouse, kids. And then we vary after that. So we decided during that season that those priorities were going to be shifted and that we were going to, for a period of time, change those priorities. But we were together in that, we were one in that. And then so we lived that out and had the church we were starting as a higher priority than each other. And then in terms of time wise and you know those elements, um, how much thought life we're putting into it, all those kinds of things. And so then but then we forgot that we had done that and just kept living life that way. And the church was going great, but our life quality was going down.
mm,
And so then we had to come back and acknowledge the truth, which is one of the elements here, is being able to really see the truth and then be in alignment and then, implement changes, whatever that is, and keep going back and forth or around the circle. Rinse and repeat, as Scott says. Um, but and then so we had to acknowledge what was going on and then come back and make edits to life and say, okay, we had our priorities wrong. Let's reorganize this, but then set up the right boundaries. That book, I don't remember who wrote it, but the book Boundaries was really helpful in
mhm,
all of that too,
mhm,
is being able to set up the right boundaries so that we know that we are keeping this protected and this protected. And where there's gray area that we're aligned in. The point is the alignment together, the oneness in the marriage through all of that. And if you're single, it's a lot easier to do that because you can create your own boundaries. But still, it's important to create boundaries so that you are so that you stay healthy. And I have more stories to go into with that, but about where I haven't had those boundaries right,
mm,
but and had
yeah,
major emotional breakdowns. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't need to get into that right now unless you want to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we all can think of times where we got out of whack with if we framed it in the terms of the trimetric. I mean, let's back up a minute. So, in case somebody is just tuning in, and hasn't been following the trimetric roadmap podcast for a while, and they're like, "What are you guys even talking about, this trimetric thing?" So, okay, so the trimetric looks at it's a holistic view of a founder-led company. So you're listening to the trimetric roadmap podcast because you're a business owner, is our assumption. You're probably a founder of that business, although we do work with successors of family businesses quite often. But you're either a founder or you're really close to the founder, right? And so we have this trimetric diagnostic tool, and specifically on this episode, we're talking about the trimetric flywheel, and we'll unpack what we mean by flywheel in just a minute. So it's not just about the founder, it's not just about the business, it's not just about your life, it's not just about your leadership qualities, it's all of those things. So the three lenses are business health, executive performance, and life quality. Business health asks, is this company structurally healthy? And we've got a whole unpacking of business health. Executive performance asks, is the leadership functioning at the level the business now requires? And is it ready to go into the next phase of what the business will require? That's executive performance. And then life quality asks the question, is the business producing the life the founder actually wants? I mean, you're a founder, you started this business for a reason. It probably wasn't just because you love the business. It's probably because you love other things like your family and your time and your freedom that you started the business. And so life quality asks, how is the business doing to support that? So back to what you were saying, Jeff. The guy who helped me originally put some legs to the business health of the TriMetric. I had the idea, the concept of the TriMetric, and then he brought this business health uh, uh, knowledge. He was attracted to the idea and wanted to help because he had a story of being an executive at IBM, top executive at IBM, and had an experience of, he said, I lost my family, I lost my marriage. That's why I really want to help you develop this. And some of us have been really close to that, but didn't. So I could totally relate to somebody who's lost their marriage and lost their family because I may have deserved it more than the person that actually had it happen to them. And Jeff, I think you were going to say, you've lost other things like you can have mental breakdowns, anxiety breakdowns, physical breakdowns, spiritual breakdowns, relational breakdown. The cost of not following a trimetric flywheel is too big a cost to ignore this thing. So that's why we're talking about it today, and that's why we're unpacking it. That's why the TriMetric Roadmap Podcast is what we might say, your reason to tune into it. I mean, there's lots of great business podcasts out there, but we have specifically tailored our entire ecosystem from a holistic perspective to support a founder-led business who's trying to keep family and marriage and life and health and spiritual life and purpose all together. And that's why it's so important.
Yeah, it's hugely important. And so many founders are living life from empty. And you have to give so much of yourself to be a
Oh,
founder of a business.
good point.
And so it's, the old metaphor of the water heater. And a water heater will heat water, but if it's empty, it burns out and uh and can explode. And so I think both you and I have experienced that of being empty and still having roles that are required to give a lot. And so, like for me, what I realized, I don't need to tell the stories of my two major breakdowns, but what I realized in those moments that I need to prioritize things that actually fill my soul. And I'm not just talking about spiritual elements. There are those, of course, in that I believe, and those need to be a non-negotiable. But what I'm talking about isn't, and I categorize those under spirit. Those fill your spirit. But what really fills my soul? And for me, it was golfing, in particular, with one friend that I had at that time. It's but there still is golf stuff, which is why I have a chipping net in my backyard right now, and I'll go out there when I'm just need a moment and hit some
And
balls.
coincidentally, your backyard neighbor has some cracks in their windows. So I don't know why, just coincidence.
Yeah, so I don't have a driving range. Yeah, no, it's just a chipping net. But and then reading and then actually talking with my wife through life.
Mm,
It's those were the three things that I realized at that moment, and
mm,
those things actually filled my soul. And rather than the things that we use to just escape, we use so many things to just escape the stress or pressure, but moving away from escape and into filling is really the key to health that I found there in those
mm,
moments. But that takes boundaries to create those, and effort to actually acknowledge what is it that fills me and
mhm.
figuring that out.
Yep. So I'm about to ask you to kind of uh, unpack a little bit more of the flywheel and what we mean by that. There's a cadence to it, but
Mhm.
just to kind of set the set it up a little bit more. Like, so here's the thing: the business can be growing and still be unhealthy. You can have money in the bank and still have an unhealthy business. That's why we do the business health diagnostic because we want to look at everything. A founder can be or feel successful and still be trapped, right? They could, and I've
Absolutely.
had that experience. I've had great success, but super trapped. And a leadership team can be busy and still not executing well. In fact, some of the best executing leadership teams don't seem that busy. It's like they're working on the highest level things and it doesn't look that busy. They're making the biggest strides and it doesn't look that busy. That's
Mhm.
actually a good sign of amazing leadership. What else? So that's why the trimetric's important. It keeps us from solving the wrong problem. You got to look at this from a holistic perspective. Um,
Yeah.
business health helps identify, it's hard to say, business health helps identify what is broken, missing, leaking, or constraining growth. Executive performance installs the leadership infrastructure needed to turn strategy into execution. And life quality keeps the founder's life, marriage, family, energy, and freedom in the conversation. So, I mean, just to kind of further set the stage, executive performance and this executive performance system sits between business health and life quality intentionally. It's right there in the middle of the two. So when leadership works better, business complexity becomes more manageable. When business complexity becomes more manageable, the founder gets more freedom, and so on and so on. So Jeff, when we talk about the TriMetric flywheel, we're talking about simple three-step process: truth, or maybe stages: truth, alignment, action. TriMetric flywheel is truth, alignment, action. So why does that matter so much in a founder-led company, those that we're typically talking to?
Yeah. Well, a flywheel is what transfers energy, basically, and keeps
Mm.
momentum going at the right level. And we just, you and I had a conversation on Sunday with a guy who's going through incredible success in his organization. And yet it, and yet you could just tell the stress and the toll that it's taking on him. And
Mm.
so the idea is, how do you keep that momentum going, but with the right transfer of energy as well,
Mhm.
um, and not letting it get out of hand. And so keeping all of those elements together, the three elements together, is what really makes sure the momentum stays steady without blowing out the engine, without blowing out the transmission, with those kinds of things. It's being able to make sure that all areas of the organization stay healthy and the person stay healthy while it's continuing to move forward. And to be able to do that, it takes all three elements: the executive performance, the business health, and I forget the last one right now. What is it? The
Life
personal,
quality.
the life quality aspect. It takes all three of those to be moving in sync. And that's what the flywheel does. It keeps them in sync. And to do that, it takes just acknowledging the truth of where you are. That is the hardest stage. We just talked about this last week, I think, of the importance of really acknowledging the truth. And you need outside influences to be able to do that, which is part of
Mm.
why we have the quiz, and the metrics that we have, the diagnostics that we have,
Mhm.
is to really have an outside influence helping you to see where your blind spots are, because you don't know what blind spots you have, otherwise they wouldn't be blind spots. You
Mhm.
don't purposely have blind spots. And so that outside influence is really important there, and to really look at the truth of where you are, and then alignment with key team members. And that can be a spouse, it could be kids, it could be other people on the team in your business. There's a
Mm.
bunch of different areas that it can be for people, but making sure there's alignment in, here's where we are and here's where we want to be. And that's the vision and elements that we've talked about before. And then what was the third one,
Action.
Scott? There's the action, is taking action to be able to actually get there. You can't just have alignment with no action. That doesn't make any sense. You have to have alignment in where you're going, and then actually be able to implement action steps to get there.
Mhm.
And then and then that's why it's cyclical, because then you look at the truth of, okay, where am I now? Which is why
Mhm.
for us, we're on a 90-day cadence of redoing diagnostics to have checkpoints of here's where we are these action steps working to get us there? Are we in alignment still? And then making sure with the new reality of where we are, making sure we're aligned in what the next stage is, and then action steps. And it just keeps going like that. And as that flywheel turns with the right stakeholders in place, key members is what I referenced that as before. And I'm now calling them stakeholders, the right stakeholders in place, making sure that we're moving together and that all areas of life continue to be working together as one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how you alluded to the point that truth, alignment, and action can be applied individually to any element. All in all, we have 21 different metrics within the TriMetric. So if you just look at your marriage, what's the truth of where we're at? What's the state of our union here? Let's get real. Like how am I doing as a husband? Like I need to know the diagnostic here. I need to know the truth. Not what I think I'm doing, because I look in the mirror, I think it's pretty good. But then I find out, you're not doing so hot. Like you got some work to do. I need to know the truth so that I can get into alignment with the wife and then put action to it. So you could apply it to business health. You could apply it to executive performance. We've been talking about executive performance lately on week after week. And action. I want to just camp on action just a little bit. So whether you apply truth, alignment, action to executive performance, business health, or life quality, action. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time, so we'll have to kind of leave it here because now we're just getting warmed up. We're just getting started. We could get into it, but action. So you mentioned, Jeff, a 90-day cadence. I like to think of it as a 13-week cadence. And I like to do that because when you start the timer on the action, you've gotten the truth, you've gotten the alignment, we're all going to move this way, and let's put it into action. What are the action steps? And we use a system that defines, okay, we call them critical strategic implementation plan. So what are the 3 to 5 CSIs we are going to complete, the quarterly objectives and other vernacular that we're going to complete in the next 13 weeks? And if you define what that is, you put a date on that, 13 weeks out. And then there are phases, there's milestones along the way. And once you do that, the reason I like to look at it as 13 weeks is because I only have 13 weeks. Like 90 days seems like a long time. If I only have 13 weeks to accomplish what, many people accomplish in 13 months, I'm going to get busy on the action. So when we say action, we mean some serious action, like let's go. What needs to happen this week? A week goes by and nothing moves on that flywheel. You wasted an entire week towards that 13 weeks, and that goes by quick. So putting some, I love the principle that the size of the thing that needs to be accomplished swells up to the time allotted, right? So if we start with 13 weeks and then we back that up to, okay, and then that means if we're going to accomplish this in 13 weeks, that means in week 1, 2, and 3, we've got to accomplish this objective. And if we're going to accomplish this objective in the next few weeks, what does that mean this week? And what if we're going to accomplish that this week? What do we need to do today? And that's sort of the one thing principle, but putting some specificity and urgency around the action. That's the piece I wanted to add there. So kind of out of time, but go ahead and wrap us up here, Jeff.
Well, that's part of why, this sounds like a lot that we're adding in here in terms of different cadences. There's a yearly, at least once a year, I'd like to do twice a year, but at least once a year full evaluation. There's a quarterly or every 13-week review. But there's also weekly. And weekly, your power journal is really helpful in terms of the daily and weekly aspect. That was transformative for me years ago. But what we do weekly with clients is we have the CSIs in front of us all the time. And so we have the CSIs in front of us, we have the issues we're dealing with or solving, and then we have to-dos within there and that are time-based. And every week we review, where are we at with these to-dos? Where are we at with solving these issues? Because the to-dos come out of the issues we're trying to solve, and the issues come out of the CSIs. So it's a flow that gets really straightforward. That just every week you're looking at these to-dos that are solving these issues, that are solving these CSIs, that are getting you to that preferred future, that vision. It's the cadence of that can be really simplified with the right system in place. And that's where some of the systems that are the engines of it really come into play as well, because you're taking, what I love is, I think there's beauty in making the complicated simple. And that's what we try to do with that.
Yes. Okay. So if you're ready to make the complicated simple and get started, the first thing to do is go to bhdforme.com, get an assessment done. From there, we'll guide you to the TriMetric snapshot. You'll get the entire diagnostic. So it starts with bhd4me.com. And this is how a founder-led company moves from diagnosis to execution. And ultimately, what we want for everyone we work with, from owner dependency to freedom. Thanks for listening and tuning into TriMetric Roadmap Podcast. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening to the TriMetric Roadmap powered by Business Freedom Advisors. I've been your host, Scott Landis. If you're growing a business but something still feels off, you're not alone. That's exactly why we created the TriMetric Quiz. It's not a personality test, it's a powerful diagnostic tool that shows you where you're in alignment and where things may be silently slipping off track across your business, life, and leadership. It only takes a few minutes, and the clarity you'll gain is a game changer. Go to TriMetricQuiz.com to take the quiz now before the cost of staying stuck gets any higher. Until next time, stay focused, stay aligned, and keep building a business that truly supports your life.